Hey folks, well, as we think about all of our beloved communities grappling with unimaginable losses here in the wake of the hurricane and flood, I want to share with you a story this evening from a flood of long ago. As we think about times past and how people pulled together and survived with strength and rebuilt their wonderful communities. Reading again from Hometown Memories. I love this book and so many wonderful stories from so many wonderful people. Browsing through the book, two great floods are mentioned several times throughout the book. A flood of 1916 and a flood of 1940. So this evening, we'll be looking at the story told by Beatrice Pierce about the 1916 flood. My father, Arthur Forrester Sr., was a good and strong man who provided for his family. He worked for E. E. Eller Produce in North Wilkesboro, in addition to raising corn and other crops at home. My mother, Nettie Forrester, stayed at home with me and my two sisters and two brothers. Viola was 14 or 15, Gordon was 10, Arthur Jr., Red, was 8, and the baby Ona was 2. Although I was only 4 years old that summer of 1916, I remember it well. Our house was off Suncrest Orchard Road in North Wilkesboro, in a field very close to the Reddys River. Normally, the river was friendly, providing opportunities for exploring and amusing ourselves while Mama tended her chores. We played in the river on hot summer days and rode on it in a paddle boat. In the winter, we skated on it, although we had never heard of ice skates and couldn't have afforded them if we had. Our shoes worked just fine. Winters then were much colder, and the iced-over Reddys River easily supported a wagon and team. Ice was cut from the river, packed in sawdust, and used by the people of North Wilkesboro well into the following summer. It was hard to believe that such a friendly and useful river could turn ugly. It had rained especially hard the night before, the hardest since it had begun 2 or 3 days previously. But we started our day as usual. My father drove to work in his wagon drawn by a team of mules. His job involved picking up the produce and supplies which had been delivered by train to the depot in downtown North Wilkesboro. By the time he reached the vicinity of the depot, the area around it had already flooded. Concerned for his own safety and anxious about his family's welfare, he turned for home. He had no way of knowing about the worsening conditions in the area around our house. My mother had already realized how bad things were. The Reddys River was over its banks and starting to flood our land. Acting quickly, she gathered up her children and abandoned the house. We walked out the door into a steady stream of water that had already surrounded our house and flooded our land. Mama couldn't even close the door against the water's force. We managed to get to higher ground and were taken in by the Phillips family, our neighbors. In the meantime, my father was trying unsuccessfully to get home. The several routes he tried were flooded. Finally, he went up Highway 18 north towards Fairplains community and down Sunset Drive, the back way to our house. By the time he came in sight of our house, the water was up to the roof. Prudently, he turned onto the old Turnpike Road, which led over a hillside to the Phillips home, where he discovered we had made it to safety. We stayed with the Phillips family for a few days until the water subsided. When we were finally able to view our house, it was a heart-wrenching sight. The inside was layered with mud 4 feet deep, and any of our belongings that hadn't been washed away were ruined. We stayed with my grandmother, Sarah Staley, in the Woodlawn community until the mud was removed and everything cleaned. We had a lot of help from neighbors and from Forrester relatives. We were soon able to move back home. The devastation spread all around North Wilkesboro. The Sashing Blind Factory, which sold lumber and made windows and doors, was destroyed, as was the tannery. The effects of the flood, including uprooted trees and landslides, were ever present. There was still much work to be done to clean up the terrible mess. I can remember my mother and my oldest sister, Viola, singing a song that someone in North Wilkesboro wrote about the flood. The only lyrics I remember are that quote, the horse at the tannery in North Wilkesboro swam the river 3 times, and also the river flooded Arthur Forrester's house, which was our house. I wish so much that I could remember the whole song. The years would pass, and I would live through another flood in 1940. At that time, I was married and expecting my first child. I was older and wiser, but that later flood was still frightening. However, it wasn't like the one I experienced as a child. That one would be hard to forget, and I hope I never have to experience another one again. So many of those descriptions remind me of driving around our communities here the last couple of days. If you happen to know anything about that song, the one mentioned there about the flood, I'd be very interested to know that as well. Everybody take care. Reach out to the communities on your heart, volunteer fire departments and rescue squads, and there's other credible sources that you can offer resources to as well.